unmute me. If you could make me the host, then I can resume the recording.
Okay.
I've started recording.
Oh, Jyoti's back. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. So we are okay now?
We're good.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So the Purush seated in Prakriti. See, this is the key word over here, seated in the Prakriti. Experiences the qualities born of Prakriti. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of his birth in good and evil wombs. Okay. So, in other words, all of this play which is happening, it is because of the attachment to the Prakriti or attachment to the qualities of the Prakriti. And what happens to the when we are attached? That means the desires erupt. Because of all those desires, we take birth. If we have a desire to become a rich person, it's money, money, money all the time. According to our karmas, we might take birth in a rich family, in a family where there's a talk of money all the time. If you have a desire to learn more, we might be born into a family of learners, learned people. So the whole birth and death, coming and going, is dependent upon our desires. According to the desires, we do the actions. According to the actions, we further create new desires. They keep on growing. Let me read it again. The Purush seated in Prakriti, and that's where we are right now. This Purush.
Herji, in chapter 2, the soul is supposed to be not wetted, not dried, nothing touches it. And then all of a sudden, the individual soul is in the form of Purush is considered so active and responsible. It confuses me.
Yes, soul in its highest form. Highest form. In its purest form. Right now, we don't identify ourselves with that pure soul. We are identifying ourselves as an individualized soul.
Oh, so
would that be the
So it's
difference?
almost just look at, think about this example. The water coming from up. They say that is the distilled water. Okay, when it comes down from the clouds, it's a distilled water. As it comes down, that water keeps on absorbing something with it. Different than the purity. And then when it comes down all the way, down on the earth, it falls into the dirt, it becomes mud. But still there is that water element in that mud. Muddy water is still distilled. But what do we call it? A mud.
teacher.
Teacher, right? So Kechar, if we can take out the water, it's a distilled water. The same way this Atma over here. And this is the whole sadhana we need to do. Instead of identifying, see, right now what do we identify ourselves? Our name, how it's spelled, how other people call it, what do they think about us, where do we live? So we have moved away from our real nature. That doesn't mean soul, pure soul is not here. It is here, but our identification is not with the pure soul. So in that sense he's talking about. And because we identify ourselves with the less than the pure, all pure soul, our desires are like that, and we just keep on taking birth.
So individualized soul gets, I don't want to use the word sucked into the material energy and gets affected by the three gunas and gets
Yes.
attached to the like
Yes.
human beings.
Yes.
So the individualized soul is that.
Yes.
And it has not purified the mind and the whole works to
Yes.
become the pure soul.
Exactly. So soul part is still pure, but our identification is not with the purity.
Oh,
We identify ourselves with the
yeah.
matter envelopments. How smart I am, how beautiful I am, or how lucky I am or unlucky I am. Whom do I know? Who knows me? We are just only looking at the layers of our personality. And the sadhana is that we got to go more and more towards the pure soul. So chapter 2 was correct. See, chapter 2 really gives us an
Overview.
overview ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's like a preview.
Yeah.
And now rest of the Bhagavad Gita, it's taking us towards all the steps so that we can practice all this. And
So now we need to dissect that soul
yes,
in its
yes,
various forms. So
yes.
one is the pure soul, the individual soul, or the so-called individualized soul. And are there any other souls also?
No.
No. It's
No,
Brahman
individualized.
and
That's
Jivatma.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called a Jivatma. In Sanskrit, it's called Jivatma. Atma, Jivatma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brahman and Jivatma.
Yeah. Okay.
Brahman is Brahm what we use for the God. Jivatma is part of Brahm.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like a highest. When Lord Krishna says there's nothing beyond me, nothing higher than me. See, first he talks about two layers, Prakriti and the Purush. Then comes the Purushottam, which is the Brahm. Yes, somebody has a question.
Raj.
Yes, Hershey, this is Raj.
Yes, Raj.
I have a question from the first shloka that we did. You said Prakriti is beginningless and Prakriti is anything other than our Atma.
Mm-hmm.
So how can that be? Like God created, God came first, and whenever later on God decided to take form or ya vikar paida ho gaye, then the world had to be created or come into existence, and then Prakriti came into being. So, but Prakriti could be, I don't know, eternal, but how can it be beginningless if anything
It's
other than Atma?
beginningless means, don't we say, the scientists, what do they say? Matter is indestructible. That's what it means, the beginningless. Indestructible means it can change the form, but you cannot destroy. You cannot destroy matter either. So science is saying exactly same what Gita is saying. The only difference between matter and the soul is matter goes through the modifications, soul does not. Okay, just try to think it through, and tomorrow when we talk about the avatars, then I'll bring the avatars into the picture. Okay, Raj?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So over here we are learning the very basic philosophy from Lord Krishna. So he says, Purush seated in Prakriti experiences the qualities born of Prakriti. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of his birth in good and evil forms. So keyword over here is the attachment. And attachment happens with the mind, with the subtle part of ours. Attachment. And we are all very familiar with this. So this destinies of the Prakriti becomes the tragic experiences of the soul. Not because they are in the soul, but because This individualized soul unnecessarily makes an unhealthy contact through its own identifications with the realm of sorrow. That is what attachment is. In other words, due to the ego, the soul identifies itself as the doer and the enjoyer of the body. So that's why the sadhana is detach yourself from this doership. Do, but detached. That's what Karam Yoga is, which we learned in the first few chapters. It's not that don't do it, definitely do it, but don't think you are doing it because you are not doing it. Prakriti is doing it and you are not the Prakriti. My mouth is speaking. That doesn't mean I'm speaking. If I can identify myself with the Atma, Atma is not speaking. Mouth is speaking. How can I say I'm doing it? But identification has to be very firm over there. So this is called ignorance. What he talked about, the attachment. Attachment is the ignorance. Or attachment came out of the ignorance. You remember avidya, asmita, rag. Rag is the attachment. Dvesh, abhinivesh. So origin of all this is ignorance. We became ignorant about our real nature. Okay, so the ignorance and attachment to the field are the two causes of this birth and death. And the rediscovery of the self or the soul, or sometimes we say awakening to our spiritual nature, can be done two ways. Detachment from the field, the Purush, the Prakriti, and experience of the real knowledge. Or in other terms which we are familiar with, the Vairagya and Vivek. Detach from the unreal and attach to the real. And real is only thing, Atma. If this was difficult to understand, next will be even more difficult. See, that's why this chapter is for many people very hard to comprehend. You got to just do slowly, verse by verse, word by word, keeping what we learned earlier in your mind though. So that means not forgetting the fundamentals of this philosophy. And fundamentals is what? Cause and effect, Prakriti and Purusha, and the Paramatma. All of that we got to keep in mind. What changes, what does not change? Who is real, what is not real? What is the goal of life? Keeping all that, let's try to understand next verse. Updrashtaha anumantacha bharta bhogta maheshwaraha Paramatma iti cha api uktaha dehe asmin purushaha para. Updrashtaha, Sakshi, watcher, the spectator. Updrashtaha. Anumantaha. Anumanta is somebody who permits you but sanctions something, that is anumantaha. Cha means and bharta, upholds all she does. That means a supporter, bhartaha. Bhogta, the enjoyer. Maheshwara, the great Lord. Paramatma, the Supreme Self. Iti means thus, cha means and, api, even, uktaha is called, dehe in the body, asmin in this, purushaha para, Supreme Purush. The Supreme Purush in this body is also called the spectator. the permitter, the supporter, the enjoyer, the great Lord, and the Supreme Self. All these different names for that one. Why? That's what we have to understand. It's like a reflection of the moon, depending upon where it's falling, we'll say it is that. Sometimes where it's falling could be dirty, or it could be shaking, or it could be crystal clear. Moon doesn't change, when the reflective medium changes. The same thing over here. So depending upon the medium, these different names to the soul are given, are understood. So let's start with the first one, Upadrashtaha. When an individual is completely deluded, totally unconscious of the self, through that person, the infinite divine expresses himself as though Upadrashta. Only watches only then. It doesn't interfere. So Atma says, do whatever you want to Prakriti. You're not paying any attention to me. Just like a kids, they are not listening. After telling the kids repeatedly, the parents, even parents will say that, do whatever you want to do. Upadrashta. It's not that soul is not powerful. But in that kind of a personality, soul says, I'm just sitting here. I'm going to just only watch. But the ego is not identifying with that soul though. Let me repeat it again. When an individual is completely deluded, so personality is deluded, totally unconscious of the self. And let me tell you, majority of the people in Kali Yuga are like this. Okay? So totally unconscious of the self, in and through him, the infinite divine expresses himself as though he is only an onlooker. It is like when a person murders an innocent victim. The infinite, all-powerful Lord expresses through that criminal's vehicle only as a silent spectator. Soul is there. When we feed ourselves with a dead animal, nothing happens to us. Soul is there, but no feeling, no compassion. That somebody had to die, somebody had to be killed to feed me. It's at that level. When the proper actions are undertaken, the mind is in a quiet mood. When the individual actor is not totally forgetful of the self, in such a being, the Supreme expresses himself as permitter, Anumantaha. This is the second word.
Okay. On one hand, he sits there and watches and does not interfere with the individual soul. On the other hand, he's said to be the permitter, supporter, and the enjoyer. In other words, how could he be just sitting quietly as a witness, but then also be permitting and what is the other word? Sanction giver, whatever.
Okay, let me tell you, he is always there. It's like parents are always there. And then if the children don't listen, the parents watch. But if children start to listen, parents will give the advice. Okay, it's not that soul is not there. It's not the parent is not sitting there. Soul is not changing. It's the personality in us got to recognize that there is some higher power inside me.
Mhm.
It's
So
it's not a decision of the soul. It's a
the super
decision
soul.
of our personality.
Mhm.
Okay?
It is the decision of our individualized soul or personality that doesn't want to listen to the
It's the mind.
God,
Yeah, don't
to the
call it
parent.
individualized soul. It's called the ego, or it's the mind or the intellect. That's why all the sadhana we need to do is on those layers of our personality. Okay? So, second level, Anumanta, when we can call ourselves Anumanta, that means we are paying little attention to the higher in us. Listen to this. When proper actions are undertaken, when we start thinking subtly, when we become Shubichuk, you remember those 7 layers? When we want to study, when we want to become better people, when we want to do selfless service, when we want to help others, then keep on hurting others. That means that higher light is making some difference in us. Okay? And then after that, what happens? When proper actions are done with full consciousness of the self and in a spirit of total surrender to the Lord, then it's called fulfiller, bharta. It's like a higher level. You will see that these actions are filled with success by His grace. You don't even want to take credit for your own actions. You say, God is the one who is working through me. Bharta. Because He is the one who is aiding us. He is the one who is fulfilling all such activities in me. So you see that there's a growth then. When with entire dedication unto Him, God, the individual is completely yoga yukta. This is a technical word, yoga yukta. In his eternal consciousness nature, which is called Nitya Chaitanya Savrupa. It seems to be the very enjoyer, bhogta. So from a upadrashta to anumanta to the bharta to the bhogta. And that's why Lord Krishna is concluding by saying that the great Ishwar, the Lord of the Lords, Maheshwar, is the higher self in the very same body. So there's no change from a upadrashta to the bhogta in the Atma. It is only change in the layers in between which we need to keep on cleaning. So Supreme Self is indicated in terms of what it looks like in its manifestations. When these Prakriti, the matter equipments, are weaving their different patterns. So that's why I said the change is only in the Prakriti over here, not in the Purusha. When it's totally, the pattern is so thick, so dark, you don't even see the light. When you make it little thin, by pulling some of these desires out, you see the light. When you pull more, you see more light. When you pull them all you see is Him. We did not change God. We did not change the Atma. We cannot change. By definition, it cannot be changed. Change or the sadhana or the practice is all about the matter layers in us. Okay, so Lord Krishna is explaining the status of the Jivatma within the body according to the personality. Okay, I know it's very deep, but if you bring the rest of what you have learned in here, it's very interesting. I want you to think it through this week. See whether it makes sense or not. And if you have a question, call me. Come to me. Okay? We're going to do one more verse and then we're going to stop. Because after that, Lord Krishna is telling us how you can achieve it also. He doesn't leave us in the midstream. He keeps on giving us the techniques also. That's why I always tell you that Bhagavad Gita is a very scientific textbook. Tells us, this is where you are, this is where you need to be, how to go there, and when you get there, how will you feel? All of it's mentioned here. So let's do just one more verse. Ya evam veti purusham prakritim cha gune sah sarvatha vartamana api na sabhuya abhijayate. Ya means who, evam means thus, veti knows, K-N-O-W-S, purusham, the purush, spirit, soul, prakritim, the matter, guna, qualities, saha means with, sarvatha in all ways, vartamana, living, api also, na means not, sa means he, bhuya, again, abhijayate is born. He who thus knows the Purush and Prakriti together with the qualities, in whatsoever condition he may be, he is not born again. So he is telling us the purpose of life is not to come back here again. That is the ultimate purpose. How to do it? Know this in reality. And knowing is not just theoretical knowing. Knowing is experiential knowing. Okay? So, what do we need to identify with? What is Purush? What is Prakriti? What is matter? That, and what is soul? How the soul got deluded by its own preoccupations, and we started identifying with the matter, with the field. And we got entangled with the gunas of the field. And we became under the influence of the gunas. And to know all of this, we got to stand apart. And standing apart is what meditation is. Meditation is a technique to really experience all this. Okay?
So when it says, regardless of their present condition, they will be liberated.
Yes.
What is this present condition of the people?
Present condition, you could be if somebody can say that, yeah, I'm a sinner. Today's a sinner can be tomorrow's a saint. So if you have a very firm resolve to do this, it's not that we have to become from got to take birth in a Brahman family to do this. This ordinarily we think that Brahman family is more learned. No, today, no matter where you are, whatever you are doing, if you have made a firm resolve to truly distinguish this, know this, and detach from the unreal and attach to the real, he says, you don't have to come back again. And then in the next verse, he will tell us meditation. It will be again the discourse on the Dhyan Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Karam Yoga. We'll talk about all that. Whichever path you want to follow, follow that, and you will reach there. Very clearly he talks about, there's no ifs and buts about it. See, the ignorance about ourselves has led us to our present predicament. We have forgotten our real nature, and we have been identifying ourselves, which we are not. We are not the body, and we think we are the body. Not only we think the body, we just want to brag about this body. And bragging about the body, and at the same time, then we do a lot of other actions which keep on giving more and more darkness in our personality. Okay, so this knowledge is very important, but knowledge alone is not going to get us there. We need to practice also. And standing apart is the practice. That's part of the practice, so standing apart. Just like I say, meditation. In meditation, we say we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are not the intellect, we are the soul, which wants to merge with the super soul. To truly experience that, and it takes time. In order to become proficient in something in the worldly level also, it takes practice. How long did it take us to walk, talk, or have a degree so that we can pay our bills, or even driving? So many things we have learned with a lot of effort. But something which is the most important thing we need to do, we think it should happen automatically. It's not going to happen automatically. You have to make a firm resolve. So Urmil, that's what he's saying. No matter where you are, what you're doing. We have many, many examples in the history. A person stooped in ignorance became a realized saint. Okay, so no matter where. Okay, so we'll talk about the several paths, because Lord Krishna talks about the knowledge, but knowledge, not just a bookish knowledge, but the realized wisdom he's talking about actually. And this realized wisdom dawns upon us with the help of the practice. So let's just stop it here. It's almost 11:30, and you can ask the questions after the chanting, because some people like to leave right after the chanting. So, but just stick around. If you have any question, we can discuss it further. So Manny, if you don't mind putting some meditative
Should I
chant.
start?
Yeah, please start. Start.
Krishna Govind, Govind, Gopal. Krishna Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Krishna Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Krishna Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Krishna Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Krishna Govind, Govind, Gopal Nandalal. Hey Gopal Nandalal, hey Gopal Nandalal. Gopal Nandalal, hey Gopal Nandalal. Hey Gopal Nandalal, hey Gopal Nandalal. Hey Gopal गोपाल नंदलाल, गोपाल नंदलाल हे गोपाल नंदलाल। हे गोपाल नंदलाल, हे गोपाल नंदलाल, गोपाल नंदलाल हे गोपाल नंदलाल। गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल नंदलाल, कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल नंदलाल। गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल नंदलाल, कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल नंदलाल। हम प्रेम नगर की बंजारन, हम प्रेम नगर की बंजारन, जप तप और साधन क्या जाने। जप तप और साधन क्या जाने। हम शाम के नाम की दीवानी, व्रत नेम के बंधन क्या जाने। हम ब्रिज की भोरी ग्वालनिया, हम ब्रिज की भोरी ग्वालनिया, ब्रह्म ज्ञान की उलझन क्या जाने। ब्रह्म ज्ञान की उलझन क्या जाने। ये प्रेम की बातें हैं ऊधो, ये प्रेम की बातें हैं ऊधो। कोई क्या समझे कोई क्या जाने। मेरे और मोहन की बातें या मैं जानूं या वो जाने। हे गोविंद हे गोपाल, हे गोपाल। मैंने श्याम सुंदर संग प्रीत करी, मैंने श्याम सुंदर संग प्रीत करी। जग में बदनाम मैं हो गई, जग में बदनाम